Welcome back to the Upside Down Health Podcast. This is episode number 3. Upside Down Health Podcast is a place where I attempt to merge together the worlds of mental health and nutrition. And I do so by interviewing, asking questions to intelligent people who have given their lives to the world of health. And today's guest is Devon Latoa. Devon is a personal trainer. He's a philosopher. He's a lover of life. He's a lover of love, and he loves to roll on the mats with big sweaty guys too. Devon, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for the introduction. I
No
appreciate that.
problem.
I appreciate you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to where we go today.
Oh yeah, it's always a very random time with you. So I figured we could just start it off with your story, starting off when you were a kid and how you got into the world of health. You have a really interesting story, so I think people would love to hear it.
Yeah. Um, you said the word lover a few times, and I love my dad. I really love. I got a lot of love for my dad, and when I was young, it was identified that I was quite talented sports wise, and my dad took a vested interest in my athletics career and also my time spent playing rugby league here in New Zealand. And that meant that my dad went off and invested some time and energy into some weekend coaching courses. And, like father, like son, like that meant that, monkey see, monkey do, the knowledge that he picked up sort of carried over to me. And I found myself from a very, very young age coaching or giving advice to other young athletes. And that sort of the nature of being invested and involved in the sport became a pattern of my life. And so any time I got into sports, took a deeper interest in like the how to of it, and then I just naturally fell into coaching roles, and that really led to me having this deep passion for coaching and being of service to others and helping others to reach their optimal, I would say,
Hmm.
because I was in that pursuit and I thought it's a worthy pursuit. And yeah, that was the pattern of my life, from a very young, like I started officially coaching at like 12 years old. And then I just always, whatever sport I was involved in, I just always continued to coach. So I'm grateful to my dad for taking that time and putting that time and energy into upskilling himself, because it was just something that I fell into myself, and I'm grateful for that. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say optimal. Is that what you said? That's what you like coaching people to their optimal self. So is that a combination of the physical training and also like mindset, how they look at things like that?
Yeah, I think it's I think it comes down to the individual. I think there's definitely components of that. And I mean, if you're really going to get to your optimal, you need to be looking at your nutrition. You need to be looking at your hydration. You need to be looking at the physical aspect. You need to be looking at your sleep. You need to be looking at how you breathe, and then we need to be looking at how we think as well. You know, but I mean, how deep you go into that, that's that's the idea of personal training, isn't it? It's like
Mm.
individualized. You can't take the same mold or template and apply it to every single individual. It just doesn't work like that. There's nuances to this. That's a real skill, you know, when you start to get into the art of coaching and mastering that art. It's a lifelong pursuit. I will never get to where I think I'd like to get to, and that like the Matthew McConaughey thing as well, of like chasing the person 10 years from now,
Yeah,
which is a nice notion as well.
I love
But
that.
yeah, I think it's really. I mean, yes, there's things that generally work for people, but I think each person comes to you with different goals or different trauma as well, different things that might be holding them back. Like, we touched a little bit beforehand on what's been going on for me, and I've definitely been unpacking some of my own trauma in the last few weeks, you know. Um, yeah, so yeah, it depends on the person in front of you, or the group in front of you, the collective in front of you, you know.
That's the hard thing
Yeah.
is that, like you talk about, it's personal training. And so there are all these pieces. So if I'm going to try to just coach someone's nutrition, then that could really help them. But it's still a piece of the puzzle. And
Mm.
there isn't just this one answer. Even ATG training, that's going to be huge, but there's still other things going on. So it's hard to just say this thing, this thing. You have to look at people as a whole. But in terms of your own case, let's just kind of narrow down on things like what has worked for you in terms of nutrition, whether it's mentally or physically. What kind of things work for you?
I know that for me to be at my leanest and meanest, as my mum would say, it's like really I tend towards the carnivore diet. Like I'm quite optimal on a carnivore style diet with that fast in the morning, you know. Um, and I haven't really been doing that too much lately because I've needed to eat a little bit more for like a little bit for the dopamine. I would say like for the brief moments of enjoyment in the day. Like I can do the
Interesting.
carnivore stuff when I'm being like quite strict and rigid and regimented, but like for the viewers out there, like I'm in Auckland, New Zealand right now, and it's where I live, and we are 12 weeks into a lockdown. You know, and a lockdown in New Zealand is, according to the OECD, is the strictest rules in the world. Like we're like our prime minister the other week said something like, "Don't talk to your neighbor." Like that's how ridiculous this like scenario in
Jeez.
New Zealand is getting. Like they've just expanded. So next week we'll see an expansion of the rules here, where you're allowed to have a barbecue with up to 25 people at your house, or I could have an outdoor exercise class with up to 25 people, but none of those 25 people are permitted to use the toilet inside your house. So they can
What?
come to your house, okay? People can come to your house and they can hang out outside, but no one can come inside and use the toilet. Okay. So, so when I say I've been eating a little bit for the dopamine, it's like I'm, uh, we've been going through it a little bit here in New Zealand. Like we're missing just the eat. Like I can't go out for dinner. Like simple things that I enjoy. I can't go to my place of work, which gives me a degree of separation from my home and allows me to like separate different tasks. I struggle at the best of times. My partner jokes that I've got undiagnosed ADHD. So I struggle at the best of times separating like modes of my life and tasks of my life. And right now, all of my life is happening in one spot. And then add to that, having ACL surgery 5 weeks ago, it became like lockdown on lockdown for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, when I say eating for the dopamine, it's like because I'm eating for brief moments of like just enjoy like sitting with like before this I had some pad thai, and I'm sitting and enjoying that deliciousness that is the pad thai because I'm not getting the social connection I would usually get when I'm at the gym. There's elements that are missing from my life right now that would give me the dopamine, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
The human
yeah.
connection, it's like we're gonna crave that naturally. You
Mm,
have a really interesting perspective. The last time we talked, we were talking about the vulnerability of people, and I guess the way you look at people, the way you look at relationships is just very interesting to me. So I wonder if you can share some wisdom in terms of like managing relationships and how to really connect with people, because it seems like that's what you're missing. Like that must be what you
mm,
really love. It's talking to people, and now you're stuck in this house and we're stuck only talking on Zooms or whatever. So, yeah, what do you think about
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate that I've got a nice home gym set up, and people are coming to my house to train. So I've started to get that connection again. And I think what you're touching on is that, I think empathy is a really powerful piece for human connection. And I think empathy is not necessarily understanding, but relating to what others are going through, relating to what others are going, and in that ability to relate, if you want to take that connection further, like having the courage to be vulnerable yourself and sort of let your guard down. Now you got to be selective, because sometimes you don't want to, like, sometimes I think as humans we can get into this situation where we start comparing stories or comparing relatability, but sometimes we should just like listen to what the other thing is like so courageously telling us, and we don't need to like say that it's okay for them to feel that way because I've got a story that relates. We can just like lean into their story a little bit, and I'm guilty of that sometimes too. Like, yeah, I understand. In my hang on, like, two ears, one mouth. Just listen. If someone's like opening up, they're really looking for someone to listen. But yeah, there's courage in that vulnerability, so and that authenticity and that honesty is like, it's where I think I struggle. Not think I know. I struggle to relate to people that come across to me as a bit of a facade, when I'm just gonna say fake. Like, I can see through what they bring to the table. Like, there's a realness there, but they don't want to let you behind the curtain, and that's okay. But I don't do niceties. I don't really do small talk. Like, it's not the way I'm wired. I want a deep personal connection. I want to talk about some real shit. Like, it's like I can do niceties, but that's not the people and problem solving elements that need to be present for me. That's why coaching is so great, because it's like people coming to you with a goal or a problem that they want to solve, and you provide the process to get there.
Mm-hmm. What do
Yeah.
you think is the difference between empathy and sympathy?
Sympathy is kind of like a fuck you.
Uh,
And I don't want anyone's sympathy. Like, empathy is kind of like that moment in the Dave Chappelle podcast recently. I don't know if you've seen it, The
I
Closer.
haven't. No.
Oh, there's a moment in there, and it's like, I don't need you to believe me. I just need you to believe that I'm a human going through a human experience. You know,
Mm.
that's what empathy is about. Like, I just need you to understand that I'm another human. You're a human, and I'm a human, and I'm going through my human experience over here. I don't save your tissues. I don't need your sympathy. I'm just letting you know, like, I'm on the journey too. You know, like, yeah. Sympathy is
That's a
kind of
good
like
one.
a fuck
How do
you.
you step out of your own head though? Like, how do you actually do that? Because I mean, I'm just now coming around to this idea in my 20s that like empathy and listening to people more than you talk and like that could be hard for people, I guess, to do because we have this
Mm.
conversation going on in our head. I heard a quote that like every conversation has four people talking, two people talking with the words, and then two people talking in their own heads. So, how do you quiet the voice in your head?
I think I'm more successful at quieting the voice in my head if I've had that time to myself to quiet the voice in my head in the day. Um, and what I mean by that is, and that's where I'm lacking a little bit at the moment, is if I've done something earlier, if I've had my time to fill my cup, so be it meditation or breath work, or I was doing the left-hand writing journey for a while, like, I've done something to get out of my head, then when I come into those conversations, I'm better able to get out of my head. But if I haven't had that time to get out of my head, I'm probably going to be in my head preparing a response rather than actually listening. That's what I've observed from me anyway. You
Yeah.
know,
What
and that's why
what
it's
is that
quite.
left hand writing thing? Before
Yeah.
you go on. I'm curious.
So earlier on in this lockdown journey, I just decided that I was going to start teaching myself how to write with my left hand because I've always been right hand dominant in terms of writing, and I just started like I got a refill page, and I would write the capital and print the capital letter A across the page and across two lines. Actually, that was the first day.
Wow.
So
Looks
the
good.
double line is like the A, and then the underneath is the right-handed version. And then I
Okay.
went with days, and I do numbers too. And yeah.
So,
And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that's like something I need to like a little routine that I need to reintroduce because oh yeah, and then I got it down to like single ABCDs. That's all left hand. Um,
wow.
I thought the beauty of it was going to be like the just learning how to write my left hand. But the actual thing that happened was the psychology of it was what was amazing because I learned it helped me judge myself less. It reduced what I call like analysis, paralysis by analysis, because like I would just like I do the A and it's not a perfect A, but it's still an A. It's still a legible A. And then I'd go on and do the next one. It might not be a perfect A, but it's still a legible A. And like by the time I'd got through a page, I might have done like 50 letters and just like like to try and try and try again. And I just stopped judging myself so much. Like you can still read it. It's still an A. Yeah, it's not a perfect A, but it's still an A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like it's still legible. You can still see it was. And the other thing that happened was it like transported me back to a time where things were like simpler. Like where I was like 5 years old again, like learning to write. And the challenging side of it is it did bring up some stuff for me, which I've like addressed recently, some conversations that I needed to have, particularly with my mum. But that's a beautiful thing too, because I got a monkey off my back, something I've been carrying for like 8 years. Like
Wow.
something she'd said to me, some words that I just had been carrying, and that would come up for me like a dark spell each time I'd get some momentum going in my life. Some words I took on which were not my words, but I took them on as my own, and they became sort of like an upper limit, like this invisible glass ceiling. They talk about like the invisible ceiling in women's pay. Well, this is like the invisible ceiling and like Devon achieving success was this thing I kept butting my head up against,
Yeah.
which wasn't true. It wasn't a true thing that I'd taken on. I just needed to address it and change it. So yeah, it was a bit weird. I didn't see those things coming from this simple
Well,
task.
I'd like to dive deeper in that, like not necessarily what you worked through, but there's this idea that like just
Oh,
be
we'll,
positive, just be positive, just be positive, right? But like maybe there's these deeper things that you actually have to work through that are
mm,
I don't know exactly how to explain what I mean, but there's the darker side, the shadow side. So how do you work
mm.
that in when you're trying to improve yourself?
I think again it comes down to the individual too. Like some people won't relate to that because some people have a really like the ability to just let go of things, like and that's a beautiful thing. But there might be other areas in their life where they struggle, you know. But for me, I think, and I think back to you know, one of the things we sort of touched on a little bit last time, like maybe like what's the meaning of life? Now I don't know the answer to that question, but one thing I've been thinking a little bit about this lifetime is that I think one of the things that our generation can do so well for each other and also for our parents is that we have this unique ability to hold space for one another to heal and maybe just like sit with our traumas and just like say it's okay or I forgive you and like and let people work through it. you know, and like, you know, in a specific sense, I'm happy to like just say it because I don't know that my mum's going to listen to this, and I've had that conversation with her anyway, you know. So years ago, things got a little bit heated between me and my mum, and some words were exchanged, and she said to me, "I hope that one day you will once again be the good person you used to be," which for me, that just went to the core of my like being, like
Mm-hmm.
because I've always believed, I've always tried to be a good like I've always tried to be a good person in the sense of never intentionally do ill by anyone, you know. So when she said those words to me, it sort of really struck me at my core, you know. And I carried those words for like carried those words for about 8 years, you know. And when I would get to some, and every now and then they would come in like a form of sort of self sabotage, you know, like I'd get some good stuff going in, and that question would come in about whether I'm a good person. Try and do something to fuck it up, you know. I just wanted to get that monkey off my back, you know. And I rang my mum and I said, "Hey, I talked about something in a loving and caring and compassionate way." And you know, 8 years ago, when things got a little bit heated, you said something to me that Carrie, you said to me this thing, and she goes, "I don't remember saying that." And man, I just ended up mad at myself, you know.
Yeah, that's a good
Because it was
story.
just this, it was like, you know, for her, I realized, like, in that moment, like, it realized I have that switch too, you know, like, I've had times in my life where I'm angry, but it's not, it's more, it comes out in other ways for me, you know, especially when I used to drink, it would be not pretty. I'd have little like moments of blackout, you know. But she obviously has this thing where she gets into a moment of like she's protecting the little child inside herself, and she says something really fucking hurtful, but she doesn't
Yeah,
remember it. And I
yeah.
realized I was
There's
like, man, because she said, she said some hurtful things to my sister too, and in that moment I realized like she don't remember saying these things. And I'm gonna accept it. I'm gonna take it at face value. I don't think she remembers saying them. She's probably feeling a little bit like how we all feel sometimes, like trying to protect that child inside, and she just says something to try and reclaim some ground or territory, you know.
mm-hmm.
And I had to laugh, and but then I rang my dad to talk to my dad about it afterwards, and he did the like drop the mic moment, you know. I rang my dad and I said, "Hey, I have some really deep, beautiful conversations with my dad, and say, Dad, how are you?" Just, yeah, I'm feeling a bit, I rang mom and needed to address something, and yeah, told my, hit my mum about the time she said I wasn't a good person, and then he goes, yeah, I mean, that's an accurate statement, son. You're like, you've always been good to other people, but I've got to tell you something, son. I was like, what? He's like, you haven't always been that good to yourself. I was like, drop the mic, fucking walk away. Holy shit.
Wow.
Like, and he's right. He's right. Like, I haven't always been that good to myself. I've like definitely made some decisions at times in my life and repeatedly made some decisions. Like in terms of alcohol and substance abuse issues and just like staying on that wagon wheel. There's been times I have not been very kind to myself. And that was like a real beautiful insight too, because it was like, on the one hand, I've been like banging my head against the wall about something that my mum, it was just a throwaway comment from my mum. Like, it was just like a nothing for her. And I've really been carrying that shit. And then on the other hand, my dad's right. Like, I've been like carrying that shit and using it as an excuse and justification to not be so kind to myself at times. And the big take home for this for me this week is that, and personal training is a little bit of a reflection for it. Most common theme in my life is I put others before myself. And so now that is something I really need to address and work on. And that's the main theme for me at the core of everything that's been going on right now. I can very easily slip back into being of service to others, but I can forget to be of service to myself. I think that's the take home for this. That's my insight so far.
I mean, there's an interesting lesson. There's a couple in there. Like the one thing I see is it relates with empathy is that you have to realize that your mother is a person and she may just have a bad day and say something like,
Mm-hmm.
and then it doesn't mean anything. But the other side is that we hold these words and then they become these beliefs within us that just sit there, and you may not even know that you believe them, but they're just manifesting, like you said,
Mm.
in forms of self sabotage, and whether they're maybe you're using drugs, and this exists for a lot of people. So yeah, there's a lot to that story, but there's a lot to take away from it.
Yeah, I think it's all like that's why I don't come in with any preconceived ideas or notions when I'm going to come into these kinds of conversations, because I think the best thing I can do is just come in with that empathy and that willingness to be vulnerable and just be really, really open and texture, because I don't know who might listen to this and like relate to that story and it might like
Yeah.
change the course of their life, you know? And in terms of that, like taking on the words, I think of the book, The Four Agreements. I think the first agreement is be impeccable to their word. Yeah, or be impeccable to the word. Something like that. It's the first agreement. It's like stay true to your word. You know, be without sins in your word, because there's the white spell and the black spell, and you can take on the words of others like a bad spell. You know, and that's what I did there. Like I knew in my head that what she said wasn't true, but in my heart, like my heart was hurting. You know, like in my core, because it was my mum and I just wanted to feel loved. You know, and I felt that was not a very like loving statement. You know,
Mhm.
and my mum and I are in a really good place. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to have that conversation with her probably if we weren't in a good place. You know, and in a good place with myself to just be able to go, hang on, I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks, and each time I think about it, it makes me really emotional. So there's something attached to this. I better like, I got two things I can do. I can bury it again, or I can just like knock it on the head, you know. And I knocked it on the head, and I'm pretty proud of myself for like knocking it on the head. You know, like if you need to do it, just do it. You know, it took me 8 years to get to the just do it, but you
So
know,
sometimes it takes some
we
courage. Is that what you're saying?
man, sometimes it takes some courage, sometimes it takes some time, and sometimes it also takes some questioning whether it's necessary or not. You know, it was necessary for me. I thought it was necessary for me. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that you use breath work, sleep, all this holistic approach for the holistic human, you know, the personal human. So I wonder if you can share some like health practices, go as generic or wide or specific as you want, certain health practices that you found helpful for health in general or even mental health specifically, calming the mind.
Man, I think first and foremost we got to address like these labels. You know, like the holistic shoot. Like I think before this whole like era of modern medicine, that was just human. You know,
Mm.
like to do meditation, to do breath work, to actually sit with the pain and emotions and not seek some kind of dopamine hit to escape it. Like I believe that was just human. And then we've like de-evolved from human into this thing that we now got to like, you're a holistic being if you do meditation and breath work and you like maybe you take these supplements and you go and get Andrew Huberman said you should get some sunshine in the morning, you know, like with like it's not this, you know, like the upside down, like it shouldn't
It
be
is the
upside
upside
down like
down.
that. You know, it's upside down. Like it shouldn't be like that. You know, like we should get up and like get outside of our house. Not like I had to remove Instagram from my home screen, you know, because it was dehumanizing me. Like I was just like in the morning, like I get up and then I'd like open these things and I'm sleep. And I remember when Instagram was a place where you just saw like really beautiful photos. Now it's like everyone's political ideal and ideology and like what they think about this lockdown and fuck, it just it was lowering my quality of life, you know.
Yeah.
And so those things that we're talking about, like the holistic things, breathwork. Man, those things really enrich my life because they're more in line with what I think it is to be a human. So like to breathe well, to like to sit in meditation is almost to like to, to philosophize. It's like to sit with thoughts sometimes and then just let the thought be and let it pass and we'll go towards the thought and then it just dissipates and disappears. It's just to be like human being, not human doing, human being, So all of those things that we touched on and like I use all of them at various times. They're about me getting back to be a human being, just being, you know, because yeah, like I said, I don't know why we've had to put all these like labels on them all of a sudden. But there's an interesting turning point in history that like I think relates to this, something that I think you're going to go away and look at. Look up something called the Flexner Report. It was published in 1910 by a gentleman by the name of Abraham Flexner. And it's a thought I had recently because you used the word holistic, and we've got this interesting thing going on in the world right now, and a lot of people are saying like it's not about health. This isn't about health, but I think people from our industry are saying it's not about health, but that's because we have a different understanding of what health is. And the transgression really happened back in 1910 when that report came out, which was the Flexner Report, which was like a systematic review of all of these health schools. And I'll tie this in with your question in a moment. So it was a systematic review of all the medical schools, in USA and Canada, where the Rockefeller Institute was behind it, and some other organization. Anyway, it ended up being that they reduced the number of medical schools, higher education facilities, from like 150 something down to 22, and they had to meet the certain criteria and standard, and it was the beginning of modern medicine as we know it. And the guy Abraham Flexner was a big proponent. He'd come through the Johns Hopkins Institute, and he was a big proponent of German-based sort of medicine, this evidence-based, scientific-based German medicine model. And so it birthed this new higher education, medical education, where it was very elitist, and the new world of modern medicine, where anything that was like homeopathy, naturopathy, physical therapy, breathwork, meditation, the things that we just touched on, fell out of the amber and were deemed to be quackery and charlatanism because they weren't scientific based. You couldn't go and like dissect a human, for example. Okay, and so that was the birth of modern medicine as we know it in USA, Canada, and a lot of the Western world, was that report, the Flexner Report. And it was just, but really what it became, the healthcare system really became really focused on like disease care or disease prevention rather than health optimization, which is what falls into the other realm, which these days I think they refer to it as complementary and alternative medicine or evidence-based medicine. So all of the things that sort of fall into the holistic realm that humanizes you is all complementary and alternative medicine or evidence-based medicine, not scientific-based medicine. So this thing is about health in the sense of what healthcare has become, which to me is disease care, whereas you and I and our colleagues really fall into the like prevention side of things, which is not as far from disease care. It's like way beforehand. Yeah. So the meditation, the breath work. What else did I touch on? Anyway, that stuff is like
a little bit of sleep,
hydration, like real food, not too much. That's all in the prevention realm.
It seems like common sense.
I think being human is meant to be common sense.
Yeah, it should be. Like, why should it be so complicated that there's an answer for every specific disease? Why can't there just be one truth about health? And I feel like what you were just talking about relates so much with that upside down idea. So Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm definitely gonna look into the whole report. I
Yeah.
love hearing these reports because it's just like Ben talks about. There was one study, and then that threw everything off with knees over toes. I've seen this with tons of other things, even with nutrition. One study on whatever it is, and then everybody just believes it, and somehow it takes over the whole world. Yeah.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, I'm pretty sure like I did it. Yeah, I had a little that Flexner report was just like the fork in the road. That's where they got rid of like reduced the number of schools. It became a real elitist thing. You know, and how a lot of good came out of the what's happened since 1910, like in the last 111 years. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good stuff, but it's responsible for a lot of like not so good stuff too. That report,
mm,
like it changed the course of history. Yeah, it'll be an interesting read for you. I'm trying to get my hands on like the original copy of it because you get reference papers and people's perspective on it, but it'd be interesting to read the original. So it'd probably be an old English. I'll probably have to follow it.
it's like
uh,
110 years old.
yeah, yeah, Abraham Flexner. There was a lot of money behind it, you know. You've got to
Hmm.
look at the like maybe what the motivation was too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of like mental health, let's just keep staying on that topic because I feel like you have a lot of good wisdom to share
Mm.
there. How do you go about like helping people who are thinking negative, stuck in these loops? Like you said, how you've been feeling this emotion 20 days in a row. Like maybe I should do something about this. So how do you transform the negative thoughts and negative emotions into more positive ones?
Honestly, and that's what part of the struggle for me. Sometimes you just got to get moving because emotions are always in motion. There's sort of a thought that I have with it. Like emotions are always in motion, and sometimes it's like a workout, or sometimes it's just getting moving. Um, that helps me like shift it, and that's where some of the struggle had been. It wasn't until yesterday. I mean, because I had ACL surgery 5 weeks ago. Yeah, it wasn't until yesterday that I just went for a walk. Like, I'd been in a car, and I'd managed to get on my scooter a couple of times, but it's just not the same. I just hadn't gone and got moving and just like created some distance from my house and just got out of my head and just in terms of like being present and what's happening in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And that finally got some stuff shifting for me. And plus because I I had a walking route planned, and then the bridge was closed, and it doubled my walking route. And like, keep in mind, I had surgery 5 weeks ago. I hadn't been, man, I literally had to come home and have a sleep for 2 hours. So it got some thoughts moving, and then I just went back. I had to have a sleep. I was so exhausted. Had a sleep for 2 hours, and then I woke up, and like whatever, some of the things that had just been not had that movement, they just disappeared. Sometimes it's a workout. Sometimes I gotta like smash a ball against the wall or whatever. Yeah. And then other times it's that meditative approach of just like just focus on the breath, and just that's what led me to I leaned into it and realized like that thing wasn't gonna move unless I like helped it move. And it was kind of like I was reclaiming my power over that. It was ringing my mom and saying, "Hey, look, I love you. This thing you said to me is not true." You know, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, honestly, there's no right or wrong answer, right? Like it's the individual, you know,
Yeah.
the individual. I tell you what doesn't help, and this ties in with the nutrition. What doesn't help is what I did 2 weeks ago, where I was like, I really wanted to eat for the dopamine, and I went and I got like 3 tubs of ice cream and 2 packets of chips and a couple of blocks of chocolate, and I was like, fuck. that did not help at all. That like put me further into the abyss. Okay,
Yeah.
so I can report that eating that shitty ass food and having it sitting in that sugar coma, that's not the approach. You know, I thought at the time that was going to be a good idea because I was like wallowing in my sorrows. And then I was like, man, I don't know how people eat this shit every day because I was hungover. I felt hungover.
Wow. Yeah. What do you think the connection is? There's obviously a connection, and I'm trying to bring these worlds together because I think there's more of a connection than people give it credit. Nutrition and mental health.
Yeah. So I think on the negative side of it, and it's similar to like drugs and alcohol. So drugs, alcohol, and that shitty food, when you consume it, you don't have to think about what's going on because you're sitting in the pain. You're consumed by the thing that you've just consumed. It takes over. You know, like whenever I used to use drugs or like drink or eat food, you escape the pain of the pain that you're trying to avoid because you're sitting in the pain of like your body having to deal with this toxic shit that you put in there. You know what I mean? But then like, so you've gone the dopamine, you've chased the dopamine of that like enjoyment of the drug or the alcohol or the food. And then as Anna Lemke said in her podcast with Andrew Huberman, but things with the human body are weighted on the side of pain, so it dumps you, like the come down is worse. So then now you've still got the pain of the thing you didn't deal with, the thing you were escaping, with the pain of your body trying to like rebalance because your body wants to be in homeostasis, you know? Whereas if you consume the good nutrients, you can just be in the homeostasis, you know? You're not adding an additional like weight, peaks and troughs of pain and suffering alongside the thing that you just need to either like let go of or like lean into or get moving with or whatever, you know? You're not dealing with so many things at once.
You're creating like a. I heard someone say this. You're basically creating like a dopamine deficit when you say you're addicted to vaping or you smoke cigarettes. Like, not only are you not covering up your problem, but you're also creating a new problem where every hour
Mm-hmm.
your body goes into withdrawal.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So you're just like, yeah, I use the term peaks and troughs. Like you're constantly, your body just wants to be in homeostasis, right? So if you got like for me, if like I just had a problem, I had something I needed to address with my mum, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But then I went to the supermarket and I ate a whole tub of ice cream. I ate 2 packets of chips. You know, like I created an additional thing. Like my body's now like having to deal with processing all that shit that I put in, like the sugar. I just needed to deal with the thing with my mum. You know, that's where I got to at the end of the 2 weeks. It was like, I just took my mum. You know, and the fear of the conversation was worse than the conversation. You know, like the reward of that conversation. You know, I sit here talking to you about it. It's like, fuck, that was good. You know, I carried that shit for 8 years. You know, you know, and I'm not saying it came up every time, but it's come up a lot for me in those 8 years. Yeah, don't create a dopamine deficit. Yeah, sometimes like, I mean, a vape, I guess. I mean, it's bad. You know, we don't know what the long-term effects of like vaping and stuff are. You know, but like, tell you what, when I used to use drugs on the regular, like that was like a 3 day or 4 day dopamine deficit. 4 days usually. It took me 4 days before I'd come out of that. You know, because the up was so massive that the down was like, whew, you don't want to be down like that. You don't want to be down where you're like having suicidal thoughts. You know, they go pretty dark. I remember sitting on the bed one day looking over at like the banister where I was going to hang the rope. You know? Like that's how down I had, and you know, I had that thought more than once. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty down during that time. Yeah. Yeah, don't do that, people. Don't do that. But
Why
you
is
got to do
this
what you got to do.
happening? You know? Why is this happening? So it's never been worse,
And so,
right?
in today's society, because we're searching for meaning. Because all of the basics, like especially in New Zealand, we're a social, like, hey, nobody should be hungry without a bed. You know, like we need meaning. You know, like what's the mission? What are you giving to the world? You know, and like going to your job and sitting in the cubicle, it's like not doing it for, like just like collecting the paycheck. It's not doing it. You know, like going home, watching Netflix, whatever. Like we're searching for meaning. You know, like I think depression and like is like the space between the life you'd like to live and the life you're living right now.
Hmm.
And a lot of people are in that space, like a life unfulfilled. You know? Maybe not having that, like scared of having that conversation that that I had, like holding themselves back, telling someone they love that they love them. You know, saying sorry, something. You know, like just carrying shit. You know, like letting go, like giving themselves permission to just be. You know, chasing their dream. I think there's a gap. I think there's a lot of gap going on right now between the life people want and the life they actually live. And that's why there's so much, yeah, we're searching for meaning. I think we're bored as well, in that searching for meaning. We're bored because so much of the things that historically we would need to survive is just taken care of, you know? And then some of the ways it's taken care of is by this like shitty not food, you know? So we're like consuming shit that's like not that good for us. TV, food, like these, like water is water, like although some of the water that comes out of the tap in certain places of the world is probably not water either, but like water is water, and then we've got this water in these bottles with these flavors and additives. Like we're putting toxic shit in our body. It's probably not helping things, you know. That's why, like, earlier I said, hang on, like, we need to stop putting like there's nothing more human than breathing. When we said about the holistic man or the holistic person, like to sit and focus on the breath and the way we breathe, like it's like the most human thing I can do. Because with my first breath, so will it come to my life, and with my last one, so will it leave. It'll be done. Like my soul's gone. So that's probably the most human thing I can do. It's just like sit and breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I mean, that's the most living thing you could do because it's not even just humans that breathe.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, that's good shit. Yeah, yeah. The most living thing. Maybe making love's maybe quite a human thing too.
Yeah.
But you get the idea. Like breathing, eating real food, drinking like water, just like natural water, and connecting with others. Like really like connecting with others. And then now we're creating like there's so many things you can do in this lifetime right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know what is it all adding to like is it all moving us in the right direction? I don't know.
Yeah. What do you
I don't
think the
know.
meaning? What do you think the? Let's just go all the way. Let's go down to the deep end. What's the meaning of life?
Mm. I don't know. What's the meaning of life? And it's just it's to be lived, actually be lived. I think we know where that. Um, Mm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the meaning of life is, man. If I knew that one, yeah. I don't think it's meant to be understood. Though. I think you're meant to live. You know. I think there's something deep within us when we know that like we're living in accord with what our meaning. You know, which and contributing to the greater good. You know, like I would contend that you sitting here doing this podcast is you leaning in closer to like what your gift is and what you can give to the world. You know, like are we giving our gifts to the world? Are you living in accordance with the thing that you're meant to do in this lifetime? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I mentioned about like I don't know, part of this what this generation can do for each other is to like hold space to heal and to have conversations and to grow and to ask each other like, are you living the life that you want to live or that you feel you should live? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's a yes, then I think that's going to contribute to the greater good, you know? And I like that notion of like, because that's the one that's at home for me a few times. I like the notion of what Keegan said before about like, are you living a life that you think your kids will be proud of you live in, you know? Because that one, like that objective assessment, yeah, that's a good objective assessment, you know?
Yep.
Because if we link it back to what we were talking about before, like to breathe, to eat food, to drink water, and to make love, to like procreate, and to move, that's like at the basic quintessential piece of being a human, And so that means that you're going to then be responsible for this other like mini Devon or mini Max, you know? So if you're living a life that's going to bring that kid or kids up in the world well, then you're leaning into the meaning of life, I think, you know? Living in a way that leads you to raise kids that are going to be beautiful members of this global community, Beautiful human being. Yeah. I don't know, something in there.
I think we're gonna call this podcast "Being Human."
Being
That's
human.
that's what I'm getting out of this, and I love how simple this message is because the truth should be simple.
Mm.
Now, something that I don't think we haven't really touched on is like this idea that's been really, really massive for me lately in terms of overcoming negative thinking and even negative states of being stuck in desire and anxiety. It's this idea that mental frameworks, ways of looking at life, can really flip the switch. So, for example, I think it was Keegan that showed me this perspective of observing pain in your body with curiosity. So instead of
Mm.
being like, what the hell is wrong with me? I started to like communicate with my body and say, hey, like, what are you trying to tell me here? And
Mm.
that perspective was huge. When I was in the gutter and I was feeling all this pain, that changed everything for me. And I started to build some momentum. And it was one little framework, but now I found 5, 6, 7 different frameworks for just dealing with certain things.
Mm.
Another one would be I've gotten a lot from Ben. So Ben likes to find the reason for why things happen and then let things go. So
Mm.
now when something happens in my life and I'm like mad about it, I will just sit with it and I'll find a reason. Why did that happen? And then I try to let it go. Maybe I think about it a couple more times, but I'm not still thinking about it for 6 months like I used to do. So,
Mm.
what kind of mental frameworks have you used for buying into this, like being able to live a healthy life, being able to be human for the long term?
Well, my partner's pretty good at calling me out on my shit sometimes, so that helps, like, because and no joke in that, like the greatest investment of your time you're gonna make is if you choose to have a partner, it's gonna be your partner. So like, if you're someone that wants to like keep moving forward, choose someone that's going to challenge you, you know, because she knows me better than I know myself sometimes. She'll call me on my shit before I'm in the shit, you know. So I think that's a good framework to have, you know, like not kidding,
Absolutely.
man. Like there's that cliche, like behind every strong man is a stronger woman, you know, all of it. That should I like that, you know, like Courtney, you know, my fiance, she's strong, you know, like she tells me what's up when I need to know what's up, you know. Including like when I'm slipping into that, she's like, "All right, you can sit in this for 24 hours or 48 hours, but then you need to pull yourself out of this." You know, she'll say things like that to me sometimes,
Hmm.
and so that's good. I can relate to the leaning into your body thing. Um, I had my first experience with that years ago when I was at a Wim Hof. I was doing a Wim Hof course, and I was like in the exhale hold, and I had this like stabbing pain um, in my back, and and I was like, oh man, what is that? And I felt like I was in a movie theater, you know, like before the title screen rolls or before the credit rolls, you know, like it's a blackout screen. And you know, we've touched on it already, and like this is why this thing I've done recently is really important. Literally, it's just like the word "your mother" flashed up, your mother, and I was like, what am I gonna do with that? And then it was like forgiveness, you know, and that's what I've been working on since then. Like that was about 3 years ago that happened. That actually, like, no word of a lie, that was the beginning. Like me and my mum were not talking at the time I did that Wim Hof thing.
Wow.
And then within a year, I flew to. She lives in New Zealand, but within a year, I'd always promised my sister that for her 21st birthday, we'd go up to Eiffel Tower. So a year later, I flew to London. My mum had flown to London. I met with my mum in London. This is like the first time we've seen each other in ages. I stayed in the hotel. I put myself in a hotel room with her for a few nights, like you know, like you know, and I started the rekindling of the relationship. So that came from that, like leaning into the sensation of my body thing and like hearing the inner voice. Like that was my experience. You know? It was like literally, it was black and white, man. What is that? You know, like you were saying, asking the question, what is that? What is that? Your mother. Okay. What do I do with that? Forgiveness. And that was the beginning of the journey to like forgive my mother and get to being able to have the conversations I had recently. So yep, definitely that framework. Because I still have that, you know, and I still use it. Sometimes I'll get like a little pain in my body and I'll just like, I'll meditate on it. What's going on there? What am I holding? Like, I think there's a book. I haven't read it, but I was recommended a book recently called Your Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about that notion. I think even the book, you can heal your back pain. It's actually not about healing your back pain. It's about healing from trauma. So there's numbers of authors who have written about the notion of like holding things within our body, you know, which is why the whole notion of like labeling breathwork and meditation is madness to me. It's just like when we talk about ancient people back in the day used those methodologies to deal with the shit that's going on with them, you know, like it was just medicine. You know? Talking to people was massive for me. That's the other framework, man. You know, like you're talking about, like, you know, you're talking about getting to the root. Sometimes I just need someone else's perspective to know that I'm just like it's not that important. I guess
Yeah. Yeah.
like let it go. Like that's a good framework. You know, human connection. Like just yeah, especially as men. For men, I think it's important. You know, because I mean, something interesting happened for me. You know, like with like going, you know, because I pulled back from Instagram and I like went quiet and I sort of hibernated for a couple of weeks there. And people in my circle reached out. It was actually really, really cool. You know, like people were checking in on me. And I was like, it was, what's the right word I'm looking for here? It restored some of my faith in humanity, you know, because I pulled back from Instagram and all of these things because I was like, this is just like, the way people are talking to each other and pushing their ideals are just like, I'm not okay with this. Like, it's humanity's not, and I pulled back from it because I was like, oh, and then like at least a dozen people must have registered that. Like one of my friends rang me, it's like something's up. I know something's up. I can feel something's up. What's up? You know? And I was like, oh man, there's still some like humanity up in this world. You know, like it really like restored my faith in things. Just like being in a place where I was going through it. I think the other framework is like the other thing that's worked for me is like stepping out my front door and putting my grass in the feet, my feet in the grass.
Yeah.
You know, and the same, but more powerful for me is like getting in the ocean, like just surrounding myself with this abundance of history, and like it's the only time for me that I just feel like fully supported by something else. You know, like when you like I just in the ocean, you just lay there, and you just let something else, like you can just let go. There's a metaphor in it for me, like getting in the ocean and just letting go, like letting this abundance of water just support me for that moment, you know? And I get out of the ocean and like things have just shifted, you know? Because that's what's hard for me, is, you know, it's just in that, like I didn't, you know, we in New Zealand we say like encourage me to talk, but I didn't do it. I didn't reach out, you know? Like I encourage others to reach out, and I say to other people that I'm here for them if they want, but I didn't do it. I just hibernated. I like really pulled back from everything, you know. So the time you know, so one of the things of me surrendering is just being in that ocean. I can really surrender.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Those are the frames. Yeah, getting in nature.
I like those. Yeah, they go along with your theme of being human. You're laying in the ocean. I think something that you were hitting at there is like trusting your intuition in a way. You're asking yourself these questions. In my way, I was saying, tell me about my pains and stuff, but you're almost saying, what does this mean? Like, and you can go into the psychosomatic side of pain and how we hold pain as in terms of mental, and there's something else going on. But even with the intuition of your friends, like there's this deeper connection that's going on where maybe it's not even like that they saw that you were off Instagram. Maybe you guys are just connected and they actually could feel that you're going through something. That's a way deeper idea, but like the interconnectedness of everybody. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's a deep idea. I think it's an accurate idea. I think some people just knew, like they knew, you know, they could just feel, or like I think sometimes we get like that voice pop in our head, like you should contact someone, and we just ignore it. But that's the intuition. I think that's your intuition speaking, like, hey, you should reach out to someone, you know. And if it comes again, like I've definitely like had it happen to me, and like reach out, and that person's going through some shit, you know. Hey, I'm just checking and seeing how do I. That is definitely what happened. Yeah, I like the avatar thing. You know, I like the avatar, like the tree, like tapping in. You know, like we're all just bundles of energy. You know, like my neighbor knew, like both my lesser neighbors. They were like hadn't seen me like buzzing around the kitchen because I was just like hibernating in my room. You know, like they were like my neighbor messaged me and she was like, "Are you okay? Like something up?" Like they knew.
Wow.
People that were like close to me, they knew what something was up. I just been going through some shit. Just been like sitting in some shit, going through some shit, thinking about a lot of shit. Can't go for a walk. Can't, you know, like I'm like not doing myself any favors right now. Can't walk, just had surgery. Need to get moving, you know. But yeah, we can, yeah, definitely, yeah. I don't think it's a wild thought. I think it's a genuine thought.
It's hard
I
to
think there was a
define
time.
it.
Yeah, I think there was a time back in the day, like I think cell phones and computers and that have like again that thing I said about like dehumanizer. I imagine that back in the day, before those things came along, I reckon people just flicked the kettle on. They just knew someone was coming around, and they were like, just, like put the jug on, like boil some water. I think you just sort of like you just had your gut. Your gut said someone's popping over.
Mm.
I think we've lost touch of that intuition. You know, yeah, I think like there's so much we don't know. Maybe that's part of it too. Is because like being human. Saying like we're the most depressed, maybe it's because we've lost touch with our. We've really lost touch with that like voice inside. And I'm saying like not living the life, not connecting to the life that we're meant to live. It's like really because we've lost touch with like what was in here. We're denying that voice in here.
Dehumanizing. I like this idea. Where did you get that?
Upside down. Dehumanizing? I don't know where I got. I'm not sure where I got dehumanizing from. Probably a collection of different things, ideas. Yeah. I definitely think some advancements in technology and in competition have like stunted progress because like the notion of competition like means people withhold information and ideas from each other too.
It's interesting because a lot of people would say that competition drives growth because people are. So yeah, I've seen both sides of that argument. And it's kind of giving me dissonance too because I don't know which side is right.
No, yeah, I mean, there's always multiple perspectives. Yeah, I think sometimes competition can like withhold information, for progress. Definitely definitely in some technology sectors too. Like if there was I think greater collaboration would improve the progression, regardless of the benefits of like competition driving people forward. I think greater collaboration is still going to drive a greater outcome. I mean, that's the real contrast here. Not whether like competition pushes people forward or whether competition stops people going forward. It's whether like a different approach, a collaborative approach, would drive a better outcome. I don't think it could be denied that a collaborative approach would drive a better outcome.
Yeah.
In almost all areas.
I think about that because like in the world of advertising, there's just all these billboards and there's these YouTube ads and it's just people shoving their opinion down your throat. Buy this shit from me, like, and they're doing it because they're trying to outsell the competition. So, is capitalism the right system? And all these like, there's all these different ideas, but like, it doesn't make sense that there should be this shoved down your throat by this. Like, there's got to be a better way than that. I mean, that's a totally different topic, but like, yeah, I guess it relates with what we were talking about last time. You could explain this Shanteram that we were talking about. I think that's the word, right?
Oh, the movement towards internal complexity. Yeah, I mean, I should revisit that book to have a look. I need to revisit that idea. Yeah, Shanteram. Yeah, read it. It's a long book. It's like 1,000. It's like 1,000 pages. Hang on.
Jeez. What's the Bible?
Yeah, it's big, man. It's big. I enjoyed it. Good read. Yeah, the movement towards internal complexity. philosophical idea he talks about in there. Yeah. Um, yeah, shoving like buy this, buy. Uh, yeah, there's a better way. Half of the shit's rubbish. Like we don't need half that shit. That's
Yeah.
probably the first thing that we need to address. Is like, I don't know, like I don't know why we need all these things. You know, that's one good thing that's come of the lockdown. It really simplifies your life. You know, that's like one good thing that comes from a lockdown. Like really simplifies your life. Like you can get back to the basics of being human, but then I really need the human connection thing. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, marketing. But I mean, but that's the thing with marketing, though. It's all about like the psychological. It's really engineered towards psychology and stuff right now. It's meant to be like about like understanding humans, you know, like. But it's not understanding the human as a whole, though, is it? Right? It's like understanding what triggers a human to like buy something.
Yep.
You know? Yeah. So it's one part of human. Yeah, I don't know. They're experts at it, clearly.
Yeah.
Just out there making a shit ton of money.
Well, we're emotional beings. I think like that's kind of the core thing that marketers and anybody selling anything, most people probably aren't doing it right, but if they're doing it right, they're tapping into the emotions of people because that's where we make
Mm.
our decisions.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll let you take on the marketing. You can deal with that one.
Yeah, which is well, it's kind of crazy because it's like this does have to do with mental health though, because how
Yeah.
many ads have you seen in your life now, and like how what point will it get to where like I click on a video and I have to wait 10 seconds to watch it and I'll watch the ad or I'll just look away and mute it because I don't want to be sold anything, but like how
Mm.
far could they take it where they're just taking up our time with these pointless videos?
Well, I mean, like we're seeing one of the biggest, most successful campaigns right now. Go and get a vaccine, get a second one, get a booster shot. You know, like this that whole thing's like really toying on human emotions. You know, like just dividing families here in New Zealand. Like I know a guy broke up with his girlfriend. You know,
Mm.
because he's got one set of views about things and she got another set of views about things, and that relationship's over. You know, like it's like one of the most successful attempts at playing off human emotion, like rightfully or wrongfully, you know, that we've seen the most current example of it. You know, like it's creating some real hostility, animosity, chaos here in New Zealand. You know,
Mm.
like yeah, we're striving for one of the highest vaccination rates in the world. Like Auckland stays in lockdown until 90% vaccination rates are achieved throughout New Zealand. So like this one area of New Zealand. So like, which city are you in at the moment?
I'm
Where are
like
you?
40 minutes outside of Chicago.
So imagine Chicago. Chicago was shut off from the rest of the United States until everywhere is at 90% double, like 2 doses of vaccine. That's what's happening in New Zealand right now. Like
Well,
that's a marketing that's really toying with people's emotions. You know,
it's dividing them. Yeah.
our prime minister was said on camera, word for word, yes, I'm creating two classes of people, the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. Like, and I'm leaving out, like, I'm not talking about like what people's views are. As we look through history, anytime like a divide has been an apartheid, a divide, a segregation, we've looked back on it and said, oh, that was the wrong thing to do. Like anytime we've had some kind of totalitarian regime that has divided your society, we've looked back on it and gone, that was not the right thing to do. If we look through the history, it's just the situation. You know? Like everywhere you turn, it's like that is being marketed. Like you have, so like I'm saying, like Chicago is on this level. We have 4 levels. So Chicago is in this lockdown until everyone else complies. That's the situation in New Zealand. That's the best way I can convey it to you.
Mm.
That's what's happening around me right now. So, because the rest of the country, well, most of the rest of the country are on a different set of rules. So we're on like this level 3, step down 2, and the rest of the country are on level 2. So everywhere else in the country, you can go to the gym, for example. You can go to the gym anywhere else in the country. But in Auckland, you can't go to the gym. So you don't get those freedoms and those rights back until everyone else complies to achieving this standard.
Yeah, that's tapping into freedom. Like you're just taking away your freedom as a person. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring up like history and looking up at history. Um, I guess it kind of relates with philosophy a little bit. What do you what do you think about like because like in terms of philosophy, it doesn't really matter what period you're at. Like philosophy is asking the same questions regardless of the time, right? And we can look back and study Confucius or all these Plato, these guys, and they were living a long, long time ago, and they were human just like us, and not that much different than us. And so we can actually relate with them, and it kind of it gets away from this dehumanizing this idea because we can actually relate with humans who are way past us. So why are you drawn to philosophy? We could maybe wrap things up here. We've been going for a while. I know you're a student of philosophy now under Ben Clarefield. He's helping you out there, but yeah, you're a philosopher at heart. What draws you there?
I think philosophy is the art of asking questions. And I think the ultimate question is what we've touched on, like what is being human? You know? That's why I asked the question of like, is what we're doing contributing to the world in such a way that it's like contributing to humanity?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's the ultimate question. You know, like I think back then they would say like, because they didn't fix them, like, what is man, and what is it to be man? You know, it's the ultimate question. Yeah, I think that's why I like the breath work and the meditation and that, because it's sitting in the question, or sometimes letting go of the question. You know, I think, yeah, and I think for me, philosophy is like getting in touch with like the question that's burning in there right now. You know,
Mm.
you know, yeah. Sometimes, like in a like applied sense, for me, it's like when I'm in front of a client, like what is going to get this person to their goals the fastest and the best possible, in the safest possible way. You know, and it ties into the like what is going to optimize this person. You know, and like, and you know, going right back to the beginning, it's always individual, and it's trial and error, and there's no certain outcome, and that's the beauty of philosophy, right? It's like, you know, that Athenian atmosphere of debate is gone. That needs to come back where people we just like talk about ideas. We've just talked about ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Like no attachment to whether they're right or wrong. We've just talked about ideas. That's philosophy, right? Just like putting it out there and then taking the bits that work for you and move you closer to the like best version of yourself. I think that's like philosophy applied, you know? Philosophy is like being open to asking the question and hearing other people's perspective on the question, and then just taking the bits that work for you, you know, and not like judging the person for thinking that way, just being like at peace with them too. That's really human too, you know, like that's where the empathy bit comes in. It's like, wow, they're just another human, and they have this different perspective that might be completely different to mine, but it's a perspective and it's theirs. And that's why I don't like this weird segregation and divide. Like, if people want to do that, cool. If people want to go that way, cool. You know, like, let's just live. You know, like, let's keep going. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of being on a lockdown. You know, I'm tired of being on a lockdown. I want to philosophize with people in person.
Damn right.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I hope that answers that question.
It does. And I think it's a pretty good place to wrap up because you pretty much summarized the whole talk right there. It's all about the other person and almost looking at yourself like you are another person. That's kind of what this internal questioning is. Like the same way you would ask your friend a question, you ask yourself that same question and ask your friend the question too. Like just
Mm.
be a human. I mean, the title is definitely being human because it's so simple, and you're not you. I don't know if I'd call you a simple man because you have many ideas and you can go deep in so many ways, but you're a human being and you did a really awesome job just explaining and simplifying how to overcome problems. Like people try to complicate things and maybe it's not as hard as we want to think it is.
Yeah, I think the big take home is like, as best as possible, we should like trust, trust, trust that voice or your gut. And then if you get it wrong, forgive yourself for it. You know, just forgive yourself. You know? Move on. You know, and like, you have to forgive yourself before you forgive others. You know,
Mm.
like, you know, that was like the big penny drop for me, was that moment with my mum. It's like, all along I knew I just needed to forgive myself for like taking on board those words. And then when she said, I don't remember saying that, I was like mad at myself, and I had to get back to forgiving myself because there is no one else. There is no one else. Like, my mom, you, like everyone else, they're way outside of my control. It's just you. Like, there is no one else. It's just you. It's you and the questions you're asking. Yes, we can ask other people those questions into this, but it's the way you take it on board and understand it. It's like, there is no one else. Like, you might give me an answer, but it's the way I hear it, interpret it, and the lens through which I've lived this life. That there is no one else. It's just me. And that intuition. We got to get back to it. Get back to it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. If you ever do go back on Instagram, could you share what your Instagram handle is so people can message you and thank you for sharing your wisdom?
At Devon Latoa. I'm on there. It's there in the app store. Like, but I'm just really limiting it. Like, I might, if I see it, I'll go on, and if there's messages, I'll respond. But I'm not scrolling anymore. Beautiful. I stop scrolling. I don't scroll, and
Yeah.
I don't go on there and forget what I was trying to go on there for.
Yeah. You almost have to search on in there. You can't scroll.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you anywhere else
Yeah.
or is it just Instagram?
No, just Instagram at Devon Latoa. Yeah.
Awesome. Man, we're gonna
Up,
definitely have to do
bro.
this again. We're gonna have to do it again for sure.
Rabbit holes.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. Thank you so much.
Up, bro.
All right, man. Yeah, you still got time in your day, but I'm gonna be hitting the hay, getting some rest, being a human. Go be a
Yeah.
human.
Yeah, go be a human. Go restore the human power. All right, hit that stop.
All right, man.